Captain Brooks sat in the control room of Earth's Space Defense Command. The screens around him showed the normal traffic of space, satellites, stations, and the occasional private vessel moving through the darkness. Nothing unusual, nothing that would break the routine of his 20-year career. Then the alarm sounded. It was not the alarm for a malfunction. It was not the alarm for a collision warning. It was the alarm that the old generals had set up decades ago and told everyone would probably never go off. The alarm that meant contact from space, from something big. Looked at the young technician named who sat at the detection console. His face had gone white. "Captain, we have multiple contacts. Very multiple. I count 100 ships. No, 200. Captain, I count 300 large vessels entering our system. They are maintaining formation. They are not broadcasting any standard identification codes." Stood up, his hand moved across the communications panel. He hit the emergency line to the White House. When the operator answered, he did not waste time on politeness. "This is Captain Brooks at Space Defense Command. We have unidentified vessels entering Earth's orbit, over 300 of them. Large military signatures. This is not a drill." 90 minutes later, was in a secure video conference with President, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and every major world leader that could be reached in the next 2 hours. The 300 ships had stopped at a safe distance from Earth. They had not attacked. They had not demanded anything. They simply waited. And then, without warning, they broadcast a message. It came in over 1,000 different frequencies in every language on Earth, with perfect translation for each one. The message was from someone called Ambassador. Watched the video feed as the alien ambassador appeared on every screen. Had a form that suggested something between an octopus and a crystalline structure. The being was clearly not human, clearly not anything Earth had ever seen, and spoke with absolute certainty and cold logic. "I represent the Galactic Council. Your species has been identified as a developing civilization located on the planet you call Earth. The Galactic Council has determined that your continued independence poses a logistical problem for our regional governance structure. Therefore, the Galactic Council issues the following directive. Your species will surrender all weapons, disarm your military capabilities, and submit to Galactic Council authority. You have 30 Earth rotations to comply." The ambassador paused. The next words were spoken with what might have been mechanical certainty or might have been contempt. Could not decide which. "Failure to comply will result in the immediate destruction of your world and your species. This is not a negotiation. This is a directive from a civilization 4,000 years more advanced than your own. Your compliance is the only logical outcome." The transmission ended. In the Oval Office, President sat in silence. Around her, military advisors began speaking rapidly, their voices rising over each other. Some spoke of surrender. Some spoke of launching everything they had at the alien fleet. Some spoke of evacuation plans that everyone knew would fail. Raised her hand, the room fell silent. "Get me every world leader. Now, I do not care if you have to call them at 3 in the morning. Get them on this line in the next 2 hours, and get me the best tactical minds we have. Military, scientific, diplomatic, I want them all here." She looked directly at the camera showing Brooks. "Captain Brooks, what do you think?" Took a breath. He had not expected to be asked, but he knew what he thought. He thought about his daughter, who was 11 years old. He thought about his sister who lived in Seoul. He thought about the billions of people who had no choice in this moment except to wait for someone else to decide their fate. "Ma'am, I think they made a mistake. They came here expecting us to break. They do not understand what humans do when they have nothing to lose." President nodded slowly. Within 4 hours, the United Nations building was filled with leaders from every nation. The discussion was intense and sometimes angry. China wanted to form an immediate coalition. Russia demanded equal status in any military response. India spoke about evacuation. Brazil asked questions about the aliens' motives. But underneath all the noise, something else was happening. A decision was forming. It was not a decision based on logic or military advantage. It was a decision based on something that Ambassador did not understand. It was a decision based on the simple fact that there were things worth more than survival. President stood before the gathered leaders of Earth. They told us to surrender. They told us we have no choice, but we are humans. We have always had a choice. Even when the odds were against us, we chose to fight. We chose to resist. We chose to hold on to what makes us human. I am telling you now, we will not surrender. We will not bow to the Galactic Council. We will prepare for what comes, and we will prepare as one. This is not about winning. This is about refusing to break. The room erupted, but it was not in anger, it was in resolve. By morning, the message had spread to every corner of Earth. Nations that had fought each other for centuries announced they were unified. Factories began running double shifts. Scientists across the world started sharing research that had been kept secret for decades. Soldiers who had been ready to retire volunteered to train new recruits. Teachers told their students that the future was uncertain, but that humans had never given up in dark times. Brooks stood in the control room watching the data screens. 300 alien ships waited in orbit above Earth. They waited for surrender. They waited for humans to give up. But 30 days away was not surrender. 30 days away was the sound of a species that said no. It was the sound of humans refusing to kneel. Ambassador would soon learn that making an ultimatum to humans was a dangerous thing, because humans did not respond to ultimatums the way the Council expected. Humans responded by deciding to be more human than ever before. The countdown began. 30 days until everything changed. Commander Frank looked at the map of Earth laid out before him. Red dots showed military installations. Blue dots showed civilian population centers. Green dots showed resource production facilities. The whole thing looked fragile. The whole thing looked impossible. But Frank had not gotten to his rank by accepting impossible. "We have 7 days to establish basic defensive positions," he said to the room full of officers. "We are not going to win a direct fight with 300 ships. That is not the goal. The goal is to make them pay for every mile. The goal is to survive long enough for someone to think of something better." Lieutenant Rachel Morgan raised her hand. She was young, maybe 30, with tactical experience from 5 different combat zones. "Sir, with respect, what is someone thinking of right now that is better?" Frank smiled. "That would be Doctor and his team at NASA. If anyone is going to pull a miracle out of thin air, it will be a scientist. In the meantime, we prepare the traditional way." The next 10 days transformed Earth into a military machine. Satellite networks that had been used for weather and communications were rerouted for defense. Radar systems from old Cold War bunkers were dusted off and brought online. Ammunition production facilities in 17 countries began running at triple capacity. In underground bunkers across Russia, soldiers prepared backup systems that had not been used since the 1970s. But the real genius came from the unconventional thinkers. Engineer Lisa Montgomery worked in a private aerospace facility in California. She looked at the problem and saw something that the military planners had missed. She called up an old colleague who now worked for a power company. They had a video meeting that lasted 4 hours. By the end of it, they had drafted a proposal that seemed insane. They sent it to Doctor. Read the proposal in his office at NASA headquarters. His eyes widened. Then he laughed. Then he sent messages to every physics team, every engineering lab, and every advanced research facility on Earth. The proposal was this: what if they built a device that could create electromagnetic pulses powerful enough to disrupt alien technology? Not to destroy it, but to interrupt it. To create moments of confusion. To give humanity fractions of seconds where the playing field was not so slanted. It was not possible. That was what everyone said. Then they did the math again. Then they said maybe it was possible. Then a Chinese research team improved the design. Then an Indian team suggested a power source that might work. Then engineers in Brazil figured out how to build it without materials they did not have. By day 15 of the countdown, 3 functioning prototypes existed. Pilot Daniel Torres sat in the cockpit of an advanced fighter jet that had been upgraded with new systems in just 2 weeks. The jet was still a jet. It would still lose a head-to-head fight with alien technology, but it had speed and maneuverability that humans had perfected over 100 years of aviation. Daniel was 32 years old. He had a wife and 2 sons. He had signed up as a fighter pilot because he wanted to protect people. Now he was training for a mission that probably meant his death. He did not volunteer because he thought he would survive. He volunteered because someone had to do it. Beside him, pilot Samuel Park was going through the same training. Samuel was Korean American, with hair turning gray at the temples. They had known each other for 8 years. They had flown together over 3 different combat zones. Now they sat together in a quiet room before a mission that might kill them both. "We are going to do this," Samuel said. It was not a question. "We are going to do this," Daniel agreed. In Moscow, General stood before a room of Russian military officers. He had commanded forces during conflicts with NATO, with rebel groups, with all kinds of enemies. But this was different. This was the whole species united under one command. He saw Russian soldiers working side by side with American soldiers. He saw Chinese generals consulting with Israeli officers. He saw humans putting aside centuries of division because the threat was real and the choice was clear. "We will hold the high ground in this," said. "We will fortify underground. We will give them no easy targets. We will make them earn every meter of earth they try to take." In hospitals in 50 countries, medical teams prepared for mass casualties. They did not know if there would be 20 casualties or 200 million. They prepared for everything. Blood banks were stocked. Emergency shelters were identified. Doctors and nurses worked double shifts just to be ready. In schools across Earth, teachers gathered their students and told them the truth. The world faced a threat from space. The world was preparing. The world would fight, but that was not the important part. "The important part," said a teacher named in Boston, "is that we stay human. We take care of each other. We help people who are scared. We do not give up. That is what humans do." By day 20 of the countdown, something remarkable had happened. The fighting between nations had stopped, not because anyone forced it. It stopped because there was no point anymore. Humans needed each other more than they needed to fight old enemies. Doctor stood in a laboratory where the electromagnetic pulse device was being assembled for final testing. The device was not beautiful. It was not elegant. It looked like someone had taken half of an old satellite, combined it with parts from a power generator, and stuck it together with hope and engineering calculations. "This will not save us," said to Lisa Montgomery, "but it might slow them down. It might create opportunities." Lisa nodded. "That is all we can ask for." President met with her advisors on day 22. The military was ready. The scientists were ready. The public was ready. But more than that, the people of Earth had made a choice. They had chosen unity. They had chosen to fight. They had chosen to be human in the face of something that wanted them to submit. "We have done everything we can," President said. "Now we wait for them to come. And when they come, we will show them what the human spirit is made of." In orbit above Earth, the 300 alien ships waited. They waited for surrender. They waited for the humans to break. They did not understand what was happening below. They did not understand that humans had already made their decision. Humans had decided to resist, and humans would keep deciding that moment after moment for as long as they could. The countdown continued. 8 days remained. Admiral Cox stood in the command center watching the screens. 30 days had passed. The countdown was done. The alien fleet was moving. It started with a single message from Ambassador. No more warnings, no more demands, just one sentence: disarm or be destroyed. Then the 300 ships began to move closer to Earth. All wings report ready status, Admiral Cox said into the communication system. His voice was steady, but his hands gripped the edge of the command table. He had fought in wars before. He had lost soldiers under his command, but he had never fought something like this. Launch all fighters, he commanded. Across the world, from underground bunkers and from carrier decks, aircraft rose into the sky. Fighter jets that had been designed over the last century of human aviation headed toward space. They knew they could not win. They knew that in a direct fight they would lose, but they were going to fight anyway. Pilot felt the acceleration press her back into her seat as her fighter screamed into the upper atmosphere. She was 29 years old. She had trained since she was 18. Now, in the moment that she had been prepared for but never truly believed would come, she was calm. On her wing was Lieutenant Aaron Hayes. Aaron had 2 kids and a wife who worked in a bank. He had written a letter to them that morning. He had not sent it because he did not know if he would need to. Now, heading toward 300 alien ships, he was grateful for that letter sitting on his desk. It meant someone would know what he chose to do. Fighter Wing 1 to command. We have visual on the lead alien vessels. They are massive. I mean, they are really massive. Copy that, Admiral Cox said. Hold formation, wait for my signal. The alien ships descended through Earth's atmosphere. They were not elegant. They were not streamlined for air resistance the way human fighters were. They were designed for space, and they descended like falling buildings. But they were surrounded by energy shields and they were moving fast. The first alien ship fired. The beam of energy was something that Earth's weapons had never encountered. It was not a missile. It was not a laser in the traditional sense. It was a directed pulse of pure energy that scorched the air as it passed. A fighter jet carrying a young pilot named Gregory Wells took the hit directly. Gregory had been flying for 6 years. He had never been in real combat before this. He lasted for 3 seconds after the beam hit his plane. 3 seconds to know what had happened. 3 seconds to understand that he was not going to survive. 3 seconds to know that he was part of something larger than himself. Then his fighter exploded in a burst of light above the Pacific Ocean. Admiral Cox felt the loss hit him like a punch, but there was no time to process it. He had 300 more pilots in the air and 300 alien ships attacking. Return fire. All units fire on designated targets. The human fighters responded. Their missiles were old technology compared to what the aliens had, but they were guided, they were fast, and they were coming in swarms. Each fighter carried between 6 and 8 missiles. Multiply that by 300 fighters and suddenly the alien ships had to deal with thousands of projectiles coming at them at high speed. The shields on the alien vessels were powerful. Most of the missiles did not get through, but some did. When a missile hit an alien ship, it exploded. The ship listed to one side. Alarms would be sounding in that vessel. Damage would be spreading through it. Saw the first alien ship take damage. She saw a secondary explosion bloom from its hull. She heard Admiral Cox's voice over the communication system. All pilots be advised. We have confirmed damage to enemy vessel. These beings can bleed. Repeat, they can bleed. Stay on target. The fighters pressed their attack. Aaron Hayes lined up on another alien ship and fired his missiles. 2 of them got through the shields. The alien ship exploded in a fireball that lit up the sky. But the aliens were learning too. They adapted their defense patterns. They started using their ships as a coordinated unit rather than as individual vessels. Their firepower became more organized. More human fighters started to fall. The battle lasted for 43 minutes. In those 43 minutes, humanity showed something that the Galactic Council had not anticipated. Humans adapted. Humans fought even when they were losing. Humans did not surrender when they were. 173 human fighter pilots died in that engagement. But the aliens lost 12 ships. 12 ships out of 300. But the point was not the numbers. The point was that these primitive beings had actually hurt the Galactic Council's military. This was not supposed to be possible. Landed her fighter with one engine damaged and her fuel running low. She brought her plane down to a military airstrip in Colorado. When she climbed out of the cockpit, her legs were shaking, not from fear, from adrenaline, from the knowledge that she had just fought something impossible. Admiral Cox received the final battle report. The numbers were worse than bad. They were catastrophic, but mixed with the casualties was something else. Unexpected damage to enemy forces, proof that the aliens could be hurt. "Send a message to President," Cox said to his communications officer. "Tell her that our pilots have bought us time. Tell her that the enemy is not unstoppable, and tell her to use that time well." Doctor received the message in his laboratory. The electromagnetic pulse device was ready for deployment. It had never been tested on a full scale. It had never been used in combat, but now it had to be. "Upload the targeting coordinates," said to his team. "Position the device for maximum coverage of the approaching fleet. We are going to give them a surprise." The device was launched on a trajectory that would place it between Earth and the alien fleet. It was a desperate measure, but desperation was all humanity had left. Above the Atlantic Ocean, the 300 alien ships regrouped. 12 of their number were gone. The rest were damaged but functional. They began a coordinated descent toward Earth's major population centers. And that was when the electromagnetic pulse device activated. The burst of energy spread outward in all directions. It was not powerful enough to destroy the alien ships, but it was powerful enough to interrupt their systems. Shields flickered, weapons went offline, navigation systems went dark. For 90 seconds, the 300 ships of the Galactic Council were blind and defenseless. And in those 90 seconds, the human race made a decision. It was time for something more than weapons. It was time for something more than desperation. It was time for communication. The Galactic Council gathered in emergency session in their command ship, positioned above Earth's orbit. Ambassador sat beside a being called Hose, an investigator who had studied 1,000 worlds and 1,000 species. Both of them stared at the data coming from the battle below. "The humans should have surrendered," said. "They had no choice. Their military they had no advanced technology. They should have broken immediately." Hose made a sound that might have been thoughtful. It was hard to tell with an alien being whose mouth was not built the same way as. "They did not break. They attacked. They got hurt. They attacked again. This is not the behavior of a rational species facing certain death." Made a decision. He turned to Hose. "I want you to go down there. I want you to study these humans. I want to know why they are behaving this way. I want to know what makes them different from every other species we have encountered." Hose left the command ship and descended to Earth in a small vessel. The probe landed in a forest outside of Boston. The investigator stepped out into the night air of Earth and immediately began observations. The data from this world filled the investigator's sensors, electromagnetic transmissions, thermal signatures from human habitation, complex chemical reactions in the atmosphere. But the real data came from observation. Hose walked into the city and found humans everywhere. In hospitals, doctors and nurses were treating soldiers who had returned from the battle. Some of the soldiers had severe injuries. Some would never fly again. Some would never walk again. But the doctors and nurses did not treat them like failures. They treated them like heroes. Hose watched as a young nurse named Lisa held the hand of a pilot who had lost both legs. "You did good," Lisa said. "You gave us time. That is what we needed." The pilot's name was Charles. He was in pain. He was in shock, but he was not broken. "Did we hurt them?" he asked. "Yes," Lisa said. "Yes, we did." Charles smiled, and Lisa smiled. In the face of loss and pain, they found meaning. Hose recorded this interaction and moved on. The investigator walked through a park where a young mother named sat on a bench with her 2 children. She was telling them a story. The story was about humans who refused to give up, about ordinary people doing extraordinary things, about the power of saying no to those who wanted to control you. The children listened. They did not understand all of it, but they understood the core. They understood that their mother was telling them about courage. They understood that even though the world was scary, there were people who were fighting to protect them. Notice the alien investigator watching. She did not run, she did not scream, she smiled. "Are you trying to understand us?" asked. Hose made a sound that machines use to indicate affirmation. "Yes, I am trying to understand why you do not surrender." Thought about this. She looked at her children. "Because there are things more important than living. If I lived by surrendering everything that makes me me, I would not really be living. I would just be existing. I want my children to grow up knowing that some things are worth fighting for, even if you lose the fight." Hose made notes. This was interesting. This was illogical. This was beautiful in a way that the investigator had not experienced before. The investigator continued observations. At a factory in Detroit, a worker named was running machinery that had been upgraded in the last month to produce ammunition. Was 63 years old. He should have been thinking about retirement. Instead, he was working 14-hour shifts. He was exhausted. He had arthritis in his hands, but he kept working. "Why do you not rest?" Hose asked him. Looked at the alien investigator. "Because if I rest, someone else has to work longer. Because my grandkids might need these bullets to survive. Because I am human and humans do not give up." In a command center in Washington, President was meeting with military advisors and world leaders. The battle had been brutal. Humanity had lost people, but they had hurt the enemy. And more than that, they had learned something. They had learned that they could hurt the enemy. Hose observed President. The human leader was tired. She had not slept in 30 hours, but she was still making decisions, still planning, still fighting. The investigator watched as a young aide approached with news that a hospital had been damaged and people had died. Closed her eyes for a moment. Then she opened them and said, "We will rebuild the hospital. We will take care of the families of those who died, and we will keep fighting." She did not break, she did not surrender, she chose to continue. Hose spent 3 days on Earth, 3 days of observation, 3 days of trying to understand this species that acted against all logic, and at the end of those 3 days, the investigator understood something that no one in the Galactic Council had considered before. Humans were not strong because they had the best weapons. Humans were not advanced because they had the best technology. Humans were powerful because they chose to be. They chose to fight. They chose to stand together. They chose to sacrifice. They chose to protect each other. The investigator watched a soldier named Robert give his own rations to a civilian. Robert was thin. He was hungry. But the civilian had a baby, and Robert chose to give up his food because that mattered more than his own comfort. Hose watched a teacher named George comfort a frightened child. The teacher did not know if he would survive the coming days, but he spent his energy making sure that child felt safe. He spent his strength protecting the young. The investigator watched humans grieve. They cried for those who had died in the battle, but through the grief, they did not lose their purpose. They turned the grief into determination. They used the loss to strengthen their resolve. When Hose returned to the command ship, Ambassador waited for the report. The investigator presented all the data in a comprehensive analysis, but the conclusion was simple. "These beings are not primitive," Hose said. "They are emerging. They are becoming something powerful, not because of their weapons or their technology, but because of their choice. They have chosen to be united. They have chosen to be brave. They have chosen to be human. This choice is their greatest strength." Listened. For the first time, the ambassador understood something. The Galactic Council had made a mistake. They had sent an ultimatum to a species that would never accept it. They had threatened beings who would choose death over slavery. They had encountered something rare and valuable. "What do you recommend?" asked. Hose made a sound that indicated deep thought. "I recommend we change our approach. This species is not an obstacle. This species is an opportunity. If the Galactic Council can find a way to make peace with humanity, the galaxy will benefit. We have not seen this kind of spirit in many thousands of years." Made a decision. He called an emergency session of the entire Galactic Council, and he presented Ho's report. He told them about humans who would not break, about beings who chose courage, about a species that understood that some things were worth dying for. The Galactic Council chamber was silent. Silence that lasted for a long time. The representatives from 1,000 species sat in their designated spaces. Some represented civilizations that had existed for 10,000 years. Some represented species that had conquered dozens of worlds. All of them were staring at the report from Hose about the humans of Earth. Council member spoke first, represented a species known for aggressive expansion and military dominance. "This report is irrelevant. We have military advantage. We should destroy this species and be done with it. They are unstable. They are unpredictable. They are a risk." But Ambassador stood, had seen war, had seen conquest, but had also seen something rare, had seen a species that would not break even when they should have. "Yes," said, "they are unpredictable, but they are also strong in ways that we do not measure in our calculations. Hose has shown us that this species has a unique characteristic. They value things beyond survival. They value freedom. They value honor. They value each other. These are the building blocks of great civilizations. Do we want to destroy the potential for greatness because we are impatient?" Leaned forward. "What are you suggesting?" "I am suggesting a new approach," said. "I am suggesting we offer the humans a choice." The chamber erupted. Offers of choice were not how the Galactic Council conducted business. The Council gave directives. The Council made demands. The idea of offering a developing species a choice was revolutionary. Continued. "We can destroy Earth. Yes. But the humans have shown that they will fight to the last person. That destruction will be costly. That destruction will spread a message through the galaxy that the Galactic Council destroys anything that resists. I am suggesting instead that we offer them what they were fighting for, the right to choose." Council member, who represented a peaceful species that had joined the Council 50,000 years ago, supported. "The investigator is correct. I have seen many species join the Council over the ages. The ones that choose to join willingly are always stronger than the ones that are forced. The ones that choose unity are always more valuable than the ones that are conquered." The debate continued for hours, but slowly a consensus was forming. Not because the Council wanted to reward the humans, but because the Council understood something else. Humans had something valuable. Humans had the kind of strength that could not be created by technology or time. Humans had chosen strength. A message was sent to Earth. It did not come from the alien ships in orbit. It came from the flagship of the Galactic Council. It was not a threat. It was not a demand. It was an offer. Captain Brooks received the message in the command center. He read it once. Then he read it again. Then he sent it directly to President. President was in a situation room with military advisors when the message arrived. She read it. She looked up at the advisors. "They are offering us a choice. They are saying we can join the Galactic Council as members, equal members, not conquered, not controlled, but as partners." The room was silent. "What are the conditions?" asked General William, who commanded the land forces. "The conditions are simple," said. "We commit to galactic defense. We share our knowledge and culture. We follow the basic laws of the Council, but our self-determination remains ours. They are treating us like equals." General William shook his head in wonder. How many other species have been offered that kind of choice? A young intelligence officer named Sophie spoke up. Based on the records we have from early encounters, almost none. The standard process is conquest or destruction. This is unprecedented. President made a decision. She called an emergency session of the United Nations. She presented the offer to every nation on Earth. She explained what it meant. She made clear that this was not a small decision. Joining the Galactic Council meant opening Earth to the galaxy. It meant change. It meant uncertainty. But it also meant survival. It meant that humanity could choose its own future. The vote was held. 24 hours later, every nation on Earth had voted. The result was unanimous. Earth would join the Galactic Council, not because they were forced, but because they chose to. Brooks was chosen to deliver Earth's response. He recorded a message and sent it into space. On behalf of the people of Earth, we accept your offer. We will join the Galactic Council, but we do so as partners, not as subjects. We bring to this partnership our strength, our creativity, and our commitment to freedom. We have shown you that humans do not break. We have shown you that humans choose. We have shown you what we are. Now we will show you what we can become. The 300 alien ships began to retreat from Earth's orbit, but they did not leave. They held formation at a new distance, a distance of respect rather than invasion. Doctor stood in his laboratory with Lisa Montgomery. The electromagnetic pulse device had not needed to be used, but it had changed everything. It had shown that humans could hurt those who seemed unstoppable. "We did it," Lisa said. "We did not surrender," said. "That was the goal. We did not surrender." In a hospital in Boston, visited Charles, the pilot who had lost his legs. Charles was sitting in a wheelchair, and already they were working on prosthetics that would let him walk again. Charles smiled when he saw. "We did not break," Charles said. "We did not break," agreed. The factory worker in Detroit heard the news about the council's offer. He sat down on his work bench and cried. He had thought he would die in that factory. He had thought humanity's choice was between surrender or extinction. Instead, humanity had chosen a third option. Humanity had chosen to fight and survive. In cities across Earth, people celebrated. But it was not a celebration of victory in the traditional sense. It was a celebration of choice. It was a celebration of the human capacity to look at impossible odds and say no, to say we will not break, to say we will not surrender. President addressed the world from the United Nations building. "We have been offered a place among the stars. We have been offered a future, but this future was not given to us. We earned it. Every soldier who flew into battle, every scientist who worked without sleep, every ordinary person who chose to stand firm, every human who refused to break. That is why we are here. That is why we will succeed." 1 year later, Earth's first ambassador to the Galactic Council was appointed. It was Samuel Park, the fighter pilot who had flown next to Daniel Torres. Samuel would represent humanity among the stars. He would tell the other species what humans were. He would show them the value of a species that could choose courage. As Samuel Park took his place among the representatives of 1,000 species, he thought about the 43-minute battle. He thought about the people who had died. He thought about the people who had chosen to fight. And he thought about what that choice meant. The Galactic Council had learned something that day. They had learned that the most advanced species in the galaxy was not the one with the best weapons. It was the one that chose to be great. The humans of Earth had chosen, and in that choice they had become something special. They had become the species that did not flinch. They had become the species that would not break.